It is time to continue on with our 2025-26 season previews today, and we have the St. Louis Blues for this one. The Blues had a pretty good second half to the season last year. They won 10 straight games, which helped boost them into the Stanley Cup playoffs last year. They have been playing some pretty good hockey, and overall I'm thinking this year is going to be another really good one. The season previews are in full swing. We are previewing all 32 teams' upcoming 2025-26 season. We have now done Anaheim to Seattle alphabetically. We are moving through these pretty quickly, only about 6 or 7 left. So if you want to check out all of them, be sure to go look in the card in the video. But that being said, let's hop into the St. Louis Blues, where again, the Blues have been a team for the last 2 years. They were out of the Stanley Cup playoffs, but this past year, they were able to get right back in. But let's go back to 2022-23, where the team went 37, 38, and 7 for 81 points. They were 23rd in the NHL that year. They did not make the playoffs. It was a roller coaster of a year. They started off really bad, and they went to be really good. Then when they were really bad, then they were really good. It was just a roller coaster of inconsistency. That's a new term that I've just thought up of there. But regardless, it was just not a good season by St. Louis, but it was beneficial because in that draft, they would go in there, they draft Jimmy Snuggerud and do a couple other things there as well. So overall, I think that was worth it. In 2023-24, the team would get better, but they would not make the playoffs. They went 43, 33, and 6 for 92 points. They were 16th in the NHL that year. I can't think of who they were battling with in that wild card race. I want to say it was Nashville and I think the Winnipeg Jets. I'm not 100% sure, but regardless, obviously they did not make the playoffs. They were battling right up there with a couple of other teams, so you can keep that in mind there as well. In 2024-25, they would get a lot better, but they would have a rough first half of the season to start that off, where they would go 44, 30, and 8 for 96 points. They were 14th in the league that year, and they would obviously make the playoffs. They would lose in round 1 to the Winnipeg Jets, and the rest is history. But more or less, I think that was a really successful season. They brought in Jim Montgomery to be the head coach, and I still really like that hiring. So overall, there is a ton of upside here for the St. Louis Blues to improve into next season. You look at the management here for St. Louis. You start off with Doug Armstrong, who has been the GM since 2010, 2011. He's been here for a very long time. I'm not surprising anybody by saying that. But regardless, it looks like his job is kind of starting to wind down here a little bit, as Alex Steen is going to take over pretty soon. So this could be one of, if not his last season as the St. Louis Blues general manager. So that's interesting there as a tidbit of news. And then Jim Montgomery is the head coach. He was hired midway through the 24-25 season. Montgomery's done some great work with the Boston Bruins and getting them to the playoffs and having some very successful regular seasons. So I expect nothing less from him here in St. Louis. But overall, I have a lot of trust in this management as a whole, and it's one of my more trustworthy managements in the league. I had some doubts about what Armstrong was doing in seasons prior, but right now, not too bad. So you look at your key arrivals and key departures for the Blues, and we're going to keep it in one clip once again because it's a pretty short list. There are only 7 players total. You start out with your key arrivals. You have Pius Suter, Nick Bjugstad, and Logan Mailloux as the guys that St. Louis has acquired to their roster. So Suter will fit in well there as a good third liner. Third line center is probably going to be where he finishes. I like that placement there for sure. And then as well as that too, Bjugstad will be your good 4C/4 third liner. I think that's really where they expect him to go, and I got no qualms with that there whatsoever. He has been pretty solid with Utah in previous years as well. And then Logan Mailloux was acquired in the Zach Bolduc trade. I have heard from a lot of Habs fans that they're expecting for him to come up to the NHL this season and play pretty well. So we'll see what happens there. But overall, those are your key arrivals. Your key departures list, you have Zach Bolduc, Radek Faksa, Ryan Suter, and Nick Leddy are the guys that St. Louis departed from on their roster. So going down the list, Bolduc, not bad. It does suck losing him because he was a really good young player last year for them. And when I saw that trade of them trading him away to Montreal for Mailloux, I'm like, I'm not so sure how I feel for that. But regardless, it happened. You can't really change it now. But overall, I think Bolduc is going to be great in Montreal. Check out the Montreal Canadiens preview. You also have Radek Faksa there, too. He was there last season with that fourth line of Walker, him, and Toropchenko. That was a really good fourth line. I enjoyed that one a lot. Ryan Suter, he will not be missed. He was not a great player for this team. And then Nick Leddy as well. Wasn't too bad either, but overall, again, one of those liabilities on the back end, creating too much cap space. He is off to San Jose. Those are your key arrivals and key departures. Overall, there's nothing really that serious in terms of either side, which is why it's all in one clip. So let's take a look now at the Hockey News' depth chart for the St. Louis Blues. Now, I'm using the Hockey News because in that way I don't do anything stupid or forget anybody. So regardless, let's hop right in. Starting off here on your left wing side, you have Pavel Buchnevich, Dylan Holloway, Dalibor Dvorsky, Nathan Walker, and Alex Texier. I almost said Tajon Walker from the Phillies. That's how you know I'm still locked in on baseball. Regardless, you start off here on your left wing side. You have Buchnevich, who I think has been a very underrated winger for a couple of years now. Has put up some good numbers with the Blues over this time here. So I got really no doubts he could probably score you a good 30, 35 goal season potentially. You also have Dylan Holloway there as well, who was somebody they acquired last year from the offer sheet. I am a pretty big fan of that Dylan Holloway acquisition. He came in there and played great. Reminder, they didn't have him against the Winnipeg Jets in the playoffs. So that's interesting there. You could kind of throw that tidbit in there as to why they lost. Anyway, you also have Dalibor Dvorsky there, projected to make the roster. He was a young kid last year. He played 2 games with St. Louis before going down to Springfield and helping them out with their playoff run. But Dvorsky, I think, will be a dynamic. He's got a good two-way sense, and he will be a very good player for the St. Louis Blues. I got no doubts about that whatsoever. You also have Nathan Walker there, too, who did just get re-signed to a contract as of a couple of hours ago. So he was a good acquisition there, and I think he was great on that fourth line for the Blues last year as well. And then Texier will be a decent extra depth piece there, a good 13th forward for the Blues there as well. You look at your center core. I like it. You have Robert Thomas, Braden Shen, Pius Suter, Nick Bjugstad rounding out your first 4, and then you have Oscar Sundqvist as your extra defenseman there as well, or defenseman, extra center there as well. So Robert Thomas, I think, has been great. Again, he's one of the more underrated centers in the league. When I post my centers list, which is coming soon, by the way, we're wrapping up the prospect pool reviews. We're going to start getting to those lists again, but with Thomas, I've really liked his dynamic game. Again, he's so underrated. Top 15 center in the league for sure. You could even argue top 10. Braden Shen, good captain. He turned out to be somebody who I was like, maybe they could trade him, but no, he's been a good player for them for a while now. So I don't really think they're going to trade him, or I don't have any qualms about it there whatsoever. Pius Suter, good third line center. I think he was a solid acquisition. Same with Nick Bjugstad, and then Sundqvist will be fun there as well as your extra center there too. On your right wing side, your right wing side's looking stacked. I feel like they might need to make some changes here. You have Jordan Kyrou, Jake Neighbors, Jimmy Snuggerud, Alex Toropchenko, and Matthew Joseph are your guys there on that right wing side. So Kyrou is Kyrou. He was a dynamic scorer last year. I think he scored 35 goals last year for the Blues, so he put up some good offensive skill there, and he's been known to do that. He's Jordan Kyrou, so come on now. Jake Neighbors, good as well. I thought he was very good too. It was smart to lock him up to a contract when St. Louis did. And then Jimmy Snuggerud is somebody who I am pretty high on heading into next season. I really do believe that Snuggerud is going to be one of those guys who contends for the Calder Trophy. He was great last year in his little stint with St. Louis. He had 4 points in 7 games played in the playoffs. I think he was just awesome for the St. Louis Blues, and I got no qualms about him whatsoever. He is going to be a lot of fun when he fully develops and gets to the NHL. And then Toropchenko, good fourth liner. Again, I enjoyed him last year in that line that St. Louis had on their fourth line. That was very dynamic. And then Matthew Joseph, good depth player there. So overall, I am actually a bigger fan of St. Louis's core than a lot of people are. this is one of my favorite forward cores in the league. I think you got your mix of dynamic top 6 forwards, but really solid bottom 6 forwards there as well. Overall, I think this was one of the more underrated cores in the National Hockey League. And then you take a look at the defensive core for the Blues. You start off on your left shot side. You have Cam Fowler, Philip Broberg, and Tyler Tucker. Then you have Cam Schoenemann and Theo Lindstein. Rounding out your guys there on the left shot side. So we hope that Cam Fowler will have even remotely close to what the season was that he had last year with the Blues. I think if he does, then there's a pretty good chance they make the playoffs this year. He was great. Philip Broberg, kind of the same thing. I had my doubts when they signed him. I'm like, why? I don't like that money, to be honest with you. But he worked out. I have no qualms about him. I think he worked out very well there as well. And then, obviously, too, Tucker, Schoenemann, and Lindstein, I think are going to swap out. I am high on Lindstein. I'm very optimistic to see what he's going to do. But Tucker did play games last year, so they'll give him the nod over Lindstein. But overall, the left shot side, I am in favor of. Your right shot side, you have Colton Parayko, Justin Falk, and Logan Mailloux. Then you have Matthew Kessel. I almost said Phil Kessel and then Amanda Kessel, so I had to take a second there to think. But regardless, Parayko there, starting off as your right shot side, leading D. Very good. Again, Parayko is still one of the more under-the-radar defensemen in the league. I don't think what he once was, because, again, he is getting up there in age, but still a solid defenseman nonetheless. Same thing can be said as Falk. And then Mailloux will be interesting. He did play games with Montreal last year, I believe. I am 90% sure he played games last year with them. So I'm optimistic to see what he's going to do, but Montreal fans have said he's ready. So we'll see if he makes that right shot side. But he's young, so he can make an impact there for sure. If he does, it's going to be very good. And then obviously there, Kessel there too. Don't know a lot about him. But that's your defensive core. Overall, you know, there's a couple of places where I'm like, I don't know, like that right shot side, you know, with those old guys like Parayko and Falk, I don't know. But I think overall, like, this is a good blue line. No qualms about it whatsoever. And then you look at your goaltending. And I got to be honest with you, I really do believe this is one of the more under-the-radar, underrated goalie tandems in the National Hockey League. You have Jordan Binnington and Joel Hofer. Then you have Colton Ellis and Vladimir Zarenko as the guys who are in your extra system there. So Binnington proved me wrong last year. Again, you guys can go look at my 2024-25 season preview. I had a lot of doubts about Jordan Binnington. I'm like, I don't really know if this kid's going to be all that. I'm not so sure I'm a big fan of him. And again, like, just because of his numbers prior, and I'm like, I don't like him. And I didn't trust him as the starter. He proved me wrong in the Four Nations, and he proved me wrong in the Stanley Cup playoffs as well. So I got nothing bad to say about Jordan Binnington anymore. I will admit, as a former Jordan Binnington hater, he proved me wrong. And then Joel Hofer there as well, I think, is a very serviceable backup too. I think someday he will be a starter. I think someday he will be. But overall, it's a very underrated tandem. And I don't really know a lot about Ellis and Zarenko. I just put him in there for goaltending depth. But if somebody goes down, those will be the guys that likely get called up, unless there's somebody else that I'm not thinking about. But that's your depth chart there for the St. Louis Blues in net. Overall, it looks pretty good. Moving on then to the biggest question surrounding St. Louis. Now, I went with one that might not be that crazy, but will the penalty kill improve? Because you look at St. Louis's metrics last year, they did have a rough start to the season, and a lot of their stats were made up in the second half of the year. But one thing that just struggled the whole way through was their penalty kill. Their penalty kill was a struggle, and even in the playoffs, it wasn't the greatest that it could have been. So I do believe that that's going to be something they're going to be focusing on here into next season. So do keep that in mind. But overall, I think, you know, they got some of these bottom sixers like Suter and Bjugstad who could maybe help out with that. And overall, I think it might just be a systematic thing as well. Maybe it's not the players itself. It could just be like the coaching. So maybe they need to go in there and take a look at what their system was and see if they can fix it. But overall, I mean, if they're going to fix it, I think they will. I have the optimism that they can. I think this team is good enough to where they're going to be able to keep pucks out of their net anyways. And then that leads you to the final question. Playoffs, standings, cup. Those are the things that we're asking ourselves here about the St. Louis Blues. So, playoffs, yes. I have them making the playoffs. Cup, I don't know. But I think standings-wise, I have them at 4th. But I have them ranked a little higher than the teams in the Metro who are fourth. I'm getting through my 32 to 1 ranking on my Instagram. Be sure to check that out. But regardless, you know, we've been looking at it, and I'm like, I like this team. I like this forward core. I like this defense. I love this goaltending. This is a team that I am pretty high on heading into next year, and I'm higher than a lot of other people are, to be completely honest with you. So there is a ton of optimism from me to the St. Louis Blues, and I really do hope that they can work out and make the playoffs next season. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below on the St. Louis Blues. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like the video down below and subscribe if you are new. But anyways, that is it for me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.